Welcome to our Park City Market Talk webinar for April 2020. I'm Ron Wilstein, a broker at Keller Williams Luxury Properties in Park City, Utah. Well, by now I'm sure you know that the resort has closed. Well, the resort closed, restaurants closed, lots of things have closed in Park City and other places due to the coronavirus. Our world has changed and we have all been touched in different ways. We're now seeing people wearing masks. It's a very different world than what we were accustomed to just a month or two ago. And unfamiliar images are now becoming commonplace. For some of us, we've been impacted by losing someone close to us or knowing people who have. And the new greeting, which nowadays concludes almost every conversation, is stay safe. We're listening to experts to help us get our way through all of this, and we know that we will never be the same. So today's report is a little different than our normal one. It's a special report looking at Park City's coronavirus outbreak. But we've got some of our regular topics too. In this webinar, I'm going to cover Park City sales and prices as I do each and every month. We're going to look at low interest rates because they've been in the news and they have an impact on us. We're going to look at the stock market crash. Oh my gosh. And then, of course, the effects of the coronavirus on Park City real estate. Let me start with the easy one, the Park City real estate market update. Over the past 12 months, there's been 1,421 sales in Park City. That consists of homes, condominiums, and vacant land. That's all real estate brokerages combined, and that is up 11% or 145 sales from the same 12-month period the year before. This graph here gives us a comparison, and we're looking at April 2019 through March 2020. The red bar represents that time period, and the silver bar represents the period 12 months before that. For homes, the number of homes is up about 3%, climbing from 525 sales to 541. But we see the big jump among condominiums, up 27%, climbing all the way up to 753 sales from 594. Lot sales are down 19%, but we're dealing with a small sampling here. It dropped from 157 by 30 to 127. Looking here at home sales, where we've broken it into Park City and the Snyderville Basin. In the Park City city limits, there's been 13% higher sales, climbing to 180 transactions from 159 the year before. We're slightly down in the Snyderville Basin by 5 sales, dropping to 361 from 366, a 1% decline. This graph here is showing you condominiums, up 11% in the city limits from 307 all the way up to 341, very positive. And then look at that number, 44% increase of condo sales in the Snyderville Basin from 287 sales all the way up to 412. Now we're looking at vacant land, and within the city limits, there were 28 sales the previous year. This past 12-month period, 20 sales. And in the Snyderville Basin, a 17% drop from 129 to 107. What we like to point out is that as the home and the condominium market stronger, then the lot market, the purchase of vacant land, tends to drop off, and the reverse is true. So that's exactly what we're seeing here in terms of number of sales. Now let's turn our attention to what everyone wants to know about, and that is prices. What's happening with the prices? Where are property values at? Where are they going? Well, a bit different story here. We're looking at home medium sold prices, the same time period, and again broken into Park City or the Snyderville Basin. A drop off of 9% for the medium sold price from the previous $2,140,000 to $1,937,500. Down slightly, just 1% in the Snyderville Basin to $1,250,000 from the previous $1,265,000. Condominium sales dropped off in the city and rose in the Snyderville Basin. Dropped off 10% from $865,000 to $775,000, but climbed 21%, making the medium sold price now $664,000 in the Snyderville Basin, compared to the year before at $547,000. And then we look at land, and there's no change in the city limits. 1,075,000 held as the medium sold price year over year. Slight decrease, only 5,000 off Snyder of a base and dropping from 490,000 to 485,000. So that gives you a snapshot of what's happening in terms of sales and number of sales and what's happening with prices overall in the Park City real estate market. We always like to look at time on the market because it's an indicator of market activity and when properties are selling, how fast are they selling. Here we're looking at closed home sales, and the average time that a property is on the market that sells is 111 days. Of course, some are faster, some take longer, but that's the average. You want to compare that with the average time that properties are on the market without selling, 269 days. So you can see that it significantly increases if a property is overpriced or for other reasons a property isn't selling compared to those that are priced correctly, and then the market time is really rather short. Before we move on to the next topic, I want to tell you about one of our recently listed luxury properties. It's a wonderful home in the Iron Canyon area. It has breathtaking views, you can see just from the background on this picture. It's on 5 acres, there's 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a little over 6,000 square feet, and it's offered today for $2,750,000. Truly a spectacular home. Here's a link to it at our website. I know it's a long link, but it will take you directly to this property in Iron Canyon. Check it out, it's well worth seeing. We've heard a lot about the lower interest rates, lowest interest rates in 50 years, and that's attracting a lot of attention both by home buyers as well as those who want to refinance their mortgage. Let's talk about refinancing here for a moment. We're looking at the lowest interest rates in 50 years. The graph behind me is showing you what the rates were back in March of 2019, then they dropped in June, September, December, and look at that, in March 3.29%. These are the lowest interest rates we've seen in 50 years. But before you rush to your lender to refinance, let me just say this, not so fast. In fact, it's more of a hard stop. There's been a flood of loan applications by people who want to refinance their property. Actually, it's probably more of a tsunami of applications. Lenders can't keep up with it. They can't service them. And so to discourage the applications, they're not offering the lower discounted interest rates. And you think that's terribly unfair. That's how they're managing it. That banks are still open, they're still approving loans, but they're struggling to keep up with new purchases, let alone refinancing. And so you just need to realize that's happening in today's marketplace. Yes, there are record low interest rates, but the refinancing is being delayed. So if you get frustrated by the process, realize that you just may want to wait a little bit as things steady out and these lenders are able to catch up with all the requests. The stock market is taking a terrible beating these days, as is our investments and our retirement accounts. There's a lot of reasons for this. Top of the list is the coronavirus outbreak. But of course, when we look at COVID-19, there's an impact on the global economies. The overall uncertainty and the fear of a recession is hitting everybody. And we're about to go into a presidential campaign, or I guess we're already into a presidential campaign and an upcoming election. Bottom line is we're really feeling the pressure here on the stock market, and investors are, including myself, I'm sure including my audience here, losing a lot of money right now and feeling the pain and the pressure of this decline. If losing a lot of our retirement money and investments in the stock market wasn't bad enough, we've got the corona outbreak virus. We're going to look at it and how it's impacting Park City as well. We've seen a lot on the news and we've heard a lot of experts, and of course it's a terrible condition. It's scary for so many. I'm broadcasting here on April 16th, 2020. Here's our catch up on the outbreak worldwide. 2,172,924 cases, 144,932 deaths, almost 145,000 deaths from this outbreak. In the United States, just under 675,000 cases with 34,458 deaths. And in Utah, there's 2,683 cases with 21 deaths. It's touched everybody. Viruses are not new to our lives, but we've never had anything like this. The highest risk groups are, of course, the elderly and those with compromised immunity and respiratory systems. But those lower risk groups are still being impacted. As far as Utah goes, the first community spread of COVID-19 Utah was in Summit County. Yes, that's where Park City is located. And it was on March 13th of this year, a little more than a month ago, and it started at the Spur Bar and Grill on Main Street. From there, it triggered a shutdown of the restaurants and non-essential businesses in Park City. It led to the early closing of Park City's resorts, and the Summit County Health Department made a recommendation, not an order, but a strong recommendation to stay at home. And the good news was people took that very, very seriously. We're so familiar with this graph, flattening the curve. It's the plea that we're hearing everywhere, and whether it was New York City or Los Angeles or Washington or wherever we live, we're all hearing this, and this is the goal, stressing the importance of reducing the strain on the hospitals, on the healthcare system, minimizing the impact on our medical resources and those with the highest need. But then we turn to real estate, and that's probably why you're watching this webinar. Let's turn to real estate in general, and then we'll take a closer look at real estate in Park City. Will sales slow as a result of COVID-19? Well, there's definitely a tendency to wait and see what happens by many buyers and, in fact, many sellers. Primary market seems to be fine, but in the investment rental market, we're expecting overall that will slow down, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. The interest rates, as I pointed out, are low. They're very attractive, and so that helps people finance and to buy. But it's a kind of an uncertain market when it comes to getting a loan, so it's just not as easy as perhaps the last time you did it. How do you sell a property? Well, sometimes people hold open houses. Well, in some states they've been banned. You can't have open houses. And even for property showings, maybe only one person is allowed to go in with the agent at a time, and of course with proper masks and disinfectant and gloves, etc. Appraisers may be challenging, as some appraisals in some places, appraisers aren't even allowed to go inside the properties. So the market in terms of real estate is changing. It's difficult. It certainly did not become easier as a result of the coronavirus. But what's happening with the Park City market? Well, good news is we're still selling properties, and I wake up very grateful every day that that's still happening. Not at the pace that it was happening, but we're still selling properties. Primary homes are still sought after as they are needed for primary residents, and that doesn't go away. Certainly the luxury of buying a second home or investment property may not be as important, kind of a non-discretionary purchase, but if you need shelter over your head and it's a long-term objective, that's a primary home purchase, and we're still seeing those happening. It's just trickier. Secondary or income properties are taking a pause as people are evaluating things. For some, it's just too nervous for them, so they're putting it on hold. Others are kind of seeing their way through this. And the important thing to realize that the coronavirus hit us during the last month of the ski season, clearly wiped us out. And if not for the coronavirus, the resorts would have closed this past Sunday, April 12th, on Easter. We would now be moving into the off-season, as we refer to it, or the mud season, or the shoulder season, whatever you want to call it. And it's during those times that rental properties are not generating much income. Sometimes they're not generating any income, or it's minimum. And so if there is any good timing to this, the fact is that the properties that probably would not be rented, or if there were rentals would be canceled, probably don't have rentals scheduled, don't have that income coming in, and you're not being, as a property owner, as impacted as you might be otherwise. What today's purchasers of rental properties have to consider is not the carrying cost during the off-season, as they would have carried it right now anyway if they bought a property, but what they need to grapple with is the uncertainty around next ski season, the 2020-21 ski season. Naturally, we have questions that lots of towns and cities across the country are asking. But in a resort town like Park City, we ask it with a slightly different flavor. Will the restaurants and the resorts be in full operation by next year? We're certainly hoping for, but we're full of uncertainty here. Will people feel comfortable traveling? How much rental income should be expected next season if maybe it isn't right until right before the ski season that the snow falls and so do people take an interest in planning their vacations? Certainly is filled with uncertainty that last year we would not have thought about, obviously. The good news is that most owners of rental properties in Park City, they do like the rental income, but they do not rely heavily upon it. So it usually doesn't make the difference between them buying or not buying. They're still interested in buying. They typically use the property a fair amount, and that's all good, well and good. They do like the rental income, but if they don't have as much, it usually isn't stopping them. So what we are seeing is some buyers are coming back in. They're getting used to the feel of the coronavirus. They're getting used to dealing with it. They're starting to negotiate purchases. And yeah, we're frankly surprised when we have showings because they definitely slow down. But now we're getting them in each category: primary home market, second homes, and the rental income properties. Now, are people looking for better deals, feeling like there's more desperate sellers out there? Yes, but some of our sellers aren't very desperate. And our inventory has dropped off as some sellers have felt they're not going to sell anything in this marketplace. And so there's a balancing going on between buyers maybe pausing but now getting used to the idea of moving forward with a purchase, maybe less inventory as some people have taken their property off the market or decide to postpone putting it on the market. Just this past week, we had a number of different sales, and so we're happy that we are seeing them. And that's an update. That's what's happening in this world with the COVID-19. Those are the changes that are impacting our lives on a daily basis related to real estate in general, Park City in particular, and things keep changing over and over and over again throughout the week. And what we've decided to do here at the Wilstein team is starting in May. We don't have an exact start date in May, but it's starting in May. We're going to start to bring you a weekly podcast. Yep, a podcast. We're not canceling our monthly Market Talk webinar. We're still going to provide you with a lot of details through our Park City newsletter. But things are changing so quickly in such an unusual way. It's important that you're made aware of what those changes are. So we're just going to start talking about them through our podcast. We'll get you information on that. There's changes, as we've alluded to, with financing, what buyers are wanting these days. That's changing with the changes in the marketplace and the adjusting to our new normal. So our podcasts may be as short as 10 minutes. They may be longer if the topics warrant a more thorough discussion and interview with guests. We're also going to start broadcasting our roundtable discussions. This is when our team comes together and talks about the market. Of course, we're going to come together using proper social distancing. We're not all going to be in proximity to each other, but we're going to broadcast our discussions, and I think you'll find them interesting. When we've done them in the past, it just gives you a different angle when we're all discussing the marketplace. Bottom line is we want to keep you informed. We realize that social distancing has become a detachment from things that we know about, we're familiar with. We're not seeing people as often, and even people who live in Park City are a little detached because they're staying home. They don't want to have the virus and they don't want to expose it to their loved ones. So our goal is for our podcast to bridge that gap, and we'll provide you with more information on that. The other thing I want to stress here is that we are still here, the Wilstein team. We are open for business. We are making deals, and we want to be here to answer any questions that you have to assist you with your Park City real estate investments. So I want to thank you for participating in our webinar. Yes, we are open for business. We want you to be safe out there. And of course, don't forget the very important protective measures that we need to take these days.